to introduce you to our speaker, Lynn Kathleen from Spark Policy Institute. Lynn?
Great. Thank you so much, Sophie, for getting us going. And we are so excited to be able to do this webinar series. Again, this is actually the 4th time that we are putting on this series, and I want to give you just a little bit of background. Today's webinar and this series is brought to you by the Colorado Farm to School Task Force with Spark Policy Institute. And I want to give a big shout out to the Healthy Farms, Healthy People Coalition and thank them for hosting this series number 4. Sophie and I will be conducting today's webinar. Sophie Oppenheimer is a research associate at Spark Policy Institute, where she provides research and evaluation services focusing on food security, nutrition, health, and education. And my name is Lynn Kathleen. I am a director at Spark, and I have over 25 years of experience in academic and applied public policy research. And I am the lead staff to the Colorado Farm to School Task Force. Now, Spark Policy Institute, we are, I think, a pretty unique group. We develop innovative, research-based approaches to help our partners solve complex societal problems that we see as defying easy solutions. And it's interesting that Farm to School falls in there, but it absolutely does. There are so many different systems that are involved, and it's so important for us to make all those systems work together. Spark Policy partners with its communities, partners, advocates, and the general public throughout the country. And so we are very excited to share with you today the evaluation toolkit that we put together in concert with the Colorado Farm to School Task Force. And we hope that you come to actually our website and look at all the different toolkits that we have put together over the years for our partners. We love sharing our toolkits. They move everybody forward in important and collective ways, so please take advantage of the resources we offer. The Farm to School Task Force was legislatively mandated in 2010 by the Colorado General Assembly. It has 15 appointed members. It is charged with increasing the use of local farm and ranch products in school food service programs to improve child nutrition and to strengthen local and regional agricultural economies. The task force receives no funding from the state of Colorado. However, it has successfully attracted a wide array of funders, starting with a federal RS stimulus grant. It currently has 2 multi-year grants from the Colorado Health Foundation and the Gates Family Foundation. In 2012, the task force identified a major gap in farm to school programming here in Colorado. We simply had very little information about what our districts were doing, and the districts engaged in farm to school were not systematically assessing their farm to school activities. To address this gap, the task force, along with Spark Policy Institute, developed the Farm to School Evaluation Toolkit for Colorado. And with a 2-year USDA Farm to School grant, the toolkit is now being rolled out nationwide through in-person workshops and webinar trainings. For those who successfully complete the 5 webinar series today, or this series, there are 5 contact hours of continuing education credits that are available through the Commission on Dietetic Registration, which happens to be the credentialing agency of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. So upon successful completion of the series, you can apply for these credits, and we will be issuing those through a certificate. Many professional associations will accept these credits. To be eligible for the credits, though, you'll need to participate in all 5 of the webinars and take both the pre- and the post-series survey. Everyone should have already taken the pre-webinar series survey. It was sent out as a link after you registered. But if you want credit for this series and have not yet taken that pre-series survey, please contact us at the end of this webinar. The post-webinar series survey will include questions to test your basic understanding of key learning components in each of the webinars. If you have any questions about the continuing education credits, please do contact us. You should have received these handouts after you signed up or as you were waiting for the webinar to start. If you haven't, please go now to this link or on the Colorado Farm to School website and scroll down and download the overview and steps and the evaluation plan template. Today's webinar is the first in a 5-part series of the Farm to School Evaluation Toolkit training. All the webinars will be archived at a link on this site. Today, we will do a quick overview of the contents of the Farm to School Evaluation Toolkit, and then we're going to delve into the training, focusing specifically on Step 1. We will end with an opportunity for you to submit your questions for us to answer. You should also know that we will be sending out these slides with all of my talking points after the webinar. So I always ask people to not sit there and type madly, trying to keep up with how fast I speak. Instead, sit there with a pad of paper or maybe with your computer on the side where you take a couple of notes, but just take notes on those things that strike you as, ooh, I want to ask a question, or, oh, this is something I never thought of and I don't want to forget it. You will get every single note and every single talking point that I have today. So don't try to, put all of that down, because you will get that. Just use this as a way to think about what really sticks out for you today and what do you need to learn. So let's find out what is in the Farm to School Evaluation Toolkit. In a succinct 8 pages, the Farm to School Evaluation Toolkit Guide, which is the overview, walks you through each step of the evaluation process. These steps are the content of our webinar training series. In addition to the guide, the toolkit contains an evaluation plan template. And there are 7 attachments. Each is focused on a specific target group that would be the subject of a Farm to School evaluation. And finally, there are 3 appendices, which provide additional supporting resources. Throughout the toolkit, you will be asked questions to guide the design of your evaluation and to help you with implementing it. You'll use the evaluation plan template to document your answers to each of the questions. Anytime you see this hand with a pencil, there is an opportunity to fill in a component of your evaluation plan using the information in the section that you're reading. And we also have these little pull-out boxes where they are really just these handy tips that are practical lessons learned by professional evaluators along the way, and they will make it a lot easier for you to do your evaluation. And finally, there are hyperlinks throughout the overview and the various other documents that will link you directly to resources that will help you with your evaluation. The Toolkit's evaluation plan template is one of today's handouts. We will be working with this plan template today and for the next 2 webinars. So be sure to save the work you do today on your evaluation plan template and bring it back to next week's webinar training. Each of the toolkit's attachments is focused on a specific target group that Farm to School efforts are intended to affect. So this includes that we often do Farm to School because we're trying to make changes in students' understanding of the food system, in their eating behaviors and so on. So we are looking at students. We have outcomes and the attachments that do measurements for how it affects parents, also for teachers, food service staff and operations, producers, school leadership, and community members. Here is a screenshot of the first page of Attachment 1, which is Outcomes for Students. Each attachment identifies specific outcomes that typical Farm to School activities would occur for this target group. So each attachment also describes the type of measurement tools that are available for evaluating the outcome and has hyperlinks to existing data collection instruments to get you started on that. In webinar number 2, we'll delve into how to select outcomes, measures, and indicators. And in webinar number 3, we will focus on how to use and adapt existing data collection tools. The toolkit also has additional resources, which you will find useful. Today, we'll talk about research partners and including partners at your local institution of higher education, be that a university, a 4-year college, or a community college. More information than we can cover today is found in Appendix A. Appendix B is a reference list to the resources in the toolkit. As the toolkit is a living document, this appendix is often one that is frequently updated. And then Appendix C is currently in development. 45 states have adopted the Common Core standards. How Farm to School programs and activities align with the Common Core is especially important, as schools are under a lot of pressure to cover content that will lead to student proficiency in the Common Core. So being able to show your principals, your teachers, your parents which farm-to-school activities meet those Common Core standards can be a particularly powerful and even necessary method to develop the support and long-term sustainability of your program. All right, let's get started. Today, we will be working with the evaluation plan template. Throughout the rest of this training, we will be presenting you with information relevant to each portion of the template in step 1. We'll have multiple breaks for you to fill in your template and share your evaluation planning with the rest of the folks on today's webinar through polls and through the chat box. But let's first start by finding out who's in today's class. Sophie will ask you some questions in 2 online polls. Okay, Sophie, let's get going.
All right, hi everybody. So as Lynn said, we'd like to get an idea of who's in the audience. So our first question to you is, what is your role in farm-to-school programs? So again, I've opened up the polling panel on the right side of your screen. I will give you about 1 minute to answer. And for this question, you can select all that apply, because I know many of us wear multiple hats. Looks like people are still selecting their answers. We have about 25 seconds left. Okay, we've got 5 seconds left for those of you who have not answered. Looks like one person is still in progress, so I'm going to leave it open and wait for them to finish. Okay, great. So it looks like the majority, though not the overwhelming majority, is a leader of a farm-to-school support organization. We also have community partners, researchers and evaluators, public health practitioners, we have some students and some garden leaders, so that's really kind of across the board.
That's fantastic. In fact, I have to say, whoever the students are out there, thank you for joining us because you guys are so important to the success of farm-to-school programs. And honestly, you're our future. And so I love it that you're being involved now. Let's take a look at one more poll. So this time, what is your experience with evaluation?
Okay, again, I've opened up the panel on the right side of your screen. And you will again have about 1 minute to answer. And again, I have opened it up to allow you to select all that apply. There's about 30 seconds left for those of you who are still reading all the answers. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll in about 5 seconds, waiting for some people to wrap it up. Okay, it looks like we have a wide variety of experience here. With the majority of you, you have actually conducted an evaluation in the past of any kind or participated in an evaluation of any kind, and then fewer but still about a quarter of you have participated in an evaluation for farm-to-school activities. And then a few of you have never conducted evaluation, and there is probably 1 or 2 of you who are scared to conduct an evaluation. So that's okay. That's what this webinar is for. Lynn, back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. It's actually kind of fun to see who all is on here. So you should know that, of course, this evaluation toolkit, its intention is really to help those people who are non-evaluators be able to do evaluation of their programs. But I'm also have learned through the sharing of this toolkit that it has been extremely useful to those people who are doing evaluation and who are evaluators, because even if you're an evaluator, the toolkit has different types of instruments that you may not have known were out there, and also gives you some real ideas about the types of outcomes that you can expect to see, and different ways to report to very specific audiences for your farm to school evaluation. So we'll get into all of that through our series, and we are so happy to have such a wide variety of folks join us today. So let's get going again. By the end of today's training, we hope this will be true, that you will have increased knowledge and skills about evaluating farm to school, that you will have increased your confidence to undertake an evaluation, and that you will have the beginning of your evaluation plan. Okay, now that we know a little bit about each other, let's get started on our farm to school evaluation plan. First, if you haven't already done so, please have that plan template ready so you can begin to fill out the sections. The Evaluation Toolkit Guide, which is that overview and steps handout, is that 8-page step-by-step instruction guide on how to prepare, plan, design, conduct, and report on your evaluation. Today, we are going to focus exclusively on step 1, prepare for your evaluation. In your Farm to School Evaluation Toolkit Guide, you will find step 1 starts on page 1. The first activity in step 1 is to identify your program to evaluate. So let's dig a bit deeper to think about what that would be. There are several ways to think about a program. There is the high-level program core elements as it is defined by the National Farm to School Network and shown on this slide. And then there is very specifics within each of these core elements. For our purposes today, we're going to focus on this higher level core element. So farm to school implementation looks different across its many sites, but we now have almost 10 years of experience to say that it really does consist of one or more following core elements. Procurement refers to the local foods that are purchased, promoted, served in your cafeteria or as a snack or a taste test with your students. Education is about students participating and learning through educational activities related to agriculture, food, health, or nutrition. And school gardens are where those students are engaged in hands-on learning through gardening. This is our first opportunity to fill in a portion of your evaluation plan. So what I want you to do is consider the program you are most interested in evaluating in terms of these 3 core elements, and write down your program on the first line of the evaluation plan template. And then I want you to share with everyone through a quick poll that Sophie will do with us, which area are you going to focus on first? Okay, Sophie.
Okay, hi everybody. So after you have written which one you want to do on your evaluation template, I have opened a poll on the right side of your screen, and the choices are school gardens, nutrition and/or agricultural education, and procurement of local foods. And I'll leave this open for another 30 seconds. Okay, looks like we're still waiting on a few people to submit their answers. Make sure you hit submit after you select your choice. Great. Okay, thank you all for participating in that. It looks like almost an equal number of people, about, let's see, a third are in each category, so that's great. It looks like everybody's doing a little bit of everything.
So that's perfect. Okay, so very fun, and that actually means that we'll have some wonderful contributions in the chat. There will be a lot of diversity in the types of things that you'll be sharing, so this will be great. Okay, let's move on. So, again, now looking at your evaluation toolkit guide, in step 1, the next subsection is the evaluation purpose. It is important from the beginning to identify why you are undertaking your evaluation. So knowing your purpose will determine the types of outcomes, indicators, measures, and even the reports that you'll want to develop and use. There are 3 major reasons to undertake an evaluation of your farm-to-school program. The first one is program improvement, and it is often the reason evaluations are conducted. You may want to understand how to improve your farm-to-school program overall, or there may be very specific components of your program, including maybe the process by which you do procurement with your local producers, or how well the taste tests are working with your kids in the cafeteria. That may be of the most interest to you. Another reason that you might do a farm-to-school evaluation is to have information for your stakeholders. And this is important because it builds a robust farm-to-school program. You really need to have that interest and participation of many different stakeholder groups. Evaluation results are a great way to share information with parents, school leaders, producers, community members, public health departments, and other key stakeholders in order to build their understanding and support for your program. And then finally, evaluation is often a requirement of your funder if you've received a grant to support your farm-to-school activities. Evaluation can also support your efforts to secure a future grant. So for example, showing a potential funder how a pilot program, maybe a school garden at one of your elementary programs, is resulting in increased student knowledge about nutrition and the food cycle could really help you make a compelling case for expanding those garden programs to additional schools. So right now you may be thinking that you're interested in more than one of these purposes. So that's great, but the evaluation toolkit can help you figure out which purpose you can realistically address and should address first. So just to get a chance to think about this, let's look at some examples of 3 purposes, those 3 purposes in your evaluation and what it might look like when it's really happened at other places. So my 3 examples come from, first, the Edible Schoolyard project in Berkeley. They wanted to evaluate their school garden program to look for program improvement. In their evaluation, they measured changes in students' knowledge of garden cycles, eco-literacy levels, and academic achievement, comparing those students in their garden program with students who were not in the program. The evaluation results were used to do continued expansion of the activities shown to be successful. Some evaluations are conducted mainly to demonstrate success to stakeholders. At the Riverside Unified School District in California, they instituted a Farm Fresh Salad Bar, which included monthly taste tests of local produce, the development and promotion of nutrition education materials, and other farm-to-school programming. So they had a lot going on. Initially, they conducted only a pre- and post-test to evaluate the effectiveness of the project for teachers involved in the activities. So focusing on teachers for them as their first step was both practical and sensible. They wanted to be able to show administrators, food service directors, and parents that teachers who participated in the program were rating these activities as successful. They also knew that it was easier to kind of get the teachers and get permission to survey the teachers than it was to go through the process to survey the students. And they wanted to get that information fast, and so they went for the teachers first. Such evidence for stakeholders is really important for continuation and expansion of programs. Sometimes the purpose of your evaluation is to communicate to your funders. So here, the Burlington School Food Project, which is a citywide collaborative formed to address the integration of local foods into school meals and address food insecurity among school-aged children. This project needed to report back to its funder how well it was meeting the project goals, and it actually had a lot of project goals. But let's just look at one of them and how they went about doing it. So, for example, the first grant goal that they were trying to meet through their grant was that Burlington school children would have increased awareness and engagement in the local food system and increased awareness about and consumption of healthy foods. That's a really big goal. The evaluation was able to demonstrate the goal was met by showing that food system education was successfully integrated into the curriculum, that students did like the taste test and they ate the healthy foods in their school meals, and that the cafeteria staff embraced their new role as educators on healthy foods. Okay, let's stop for a moment and pull out your evaluation plan template again. Now is the time to complete your evaluation purpose. So considering these three main purposes for conducting a farm-to-school evaluation, which one will you be doing? And again, so that we have a sense of what everyone is doing, Sophie's going to conduct another quick poll. And I know that you probably want to do more than one of these, but pick one, like what is the first one that you think is most important for you to do, and focus on that one now.
Okay, hi everybody. So I see that most of you have already found it, but again, the polling panel should be open on the right side of your screen. And I will try to leave it open for about 45 more seconds. Okay, we have about 30 seconds left. Okay, great. Well, thank you everybody who participated, and it looks like the majority chose information for funders, but then we also have a large majority who would like to use their evaluation results for program improvement, and then we also have some for information for stakeholders, so that's great.
Great. Again, it's terrific when we have people who are doing their evaluation for so many different reasons and focusing and have different purposes. And so this is going to be a great series because there's so much diversity here. So let's keep on going. Now we're going to move on to when do you evaluate your program. So it turns out there's some key considerations here. On page 2 of your Farm to School Evaluation Guide are those considerations that will determine the timeline of your evaluation activities, both when you would begin and when it will end. The timeline of your evaluation could depend on when your program activities begin and end. For example, if you are evaluating a school garden, you'll want to start in the spring when the garden is being planted, or even earlier, depending on what you want to know. Here, you're interested in finding out what the students know before they start gardening. The end date for your evaluation of a school garden program might be in the fall, after the last harvest, to find out what the students learned during their work and education through the school garden. Ideally, you would not just collect data at the very beginning and the very end, although that's perfectly acceptable, but you could also collect data at different points during the school garden season. So such decisions will actually be made later. For now, all you need to figure out on the timeline is when would you need to start your evaluation, given what you think you're going to be evaluating, and when does it need to end? Let's look a little bit more into these considerations. Your evaluation timeline may be driven by when you need those results. So if you have a grant from your Farm to School program, and I saw a lot of you were doing it for funders, your funder may be requiring this evaluation, so I bet that's why you're here. And that end date of your evaluation will likely be very dependent on your funder's reporting deadline. But remember, when reporting to external stakeholders, you should set your internal deadline several weeks to a month earlier than that external deadline. This will ensure that you have sufficient time to complete all the tasks associated with evaluation reporting and will give you some extra time for any unforeseen delays. Your evaluation timeline may also be driven by internal needs, such as when are your teachers choosing and developing curriculum that might be tied to the school garden? Remember, you want to keep in mind the purpose of your evaluation and then find out when is the information going to be needed in order for it to be useful. Finally, your timeline may be dependent on the very practical reality of when you have access to the resources. You may need to design the start and end date of your evaluation around the availability of when you have access to a research team or an individual researcher. For example, if you have recruited a graduate student who wants to conduct the evaluation as part of his or her class project, you may need to align that start and end date with the fall and spring semesters respectively. Relatedly, if you're collecting data from teachers or students, you'll need to do it when they are available. Don't expect a teacher to fill out your pretest at the start of the school year, and don't assume you can implement data collection with students anytime. Finally, all that data does have to be analyzed. And again, if you're relying on someone else to analyze the data, and we'll talk about more on that shortly, be sure to get your commitments from your researcher for when they can do that work. Remember, it's important to ask questions about access to resources when determining your timeline. Okay, I'm going to stop again, and this time you're going to get out your evaluation plan template, put it on your table, and start writing. For the purposes of this training, just do your best estimate of a reasonable start date for your evaluation and end date for when you're going to need these results. Of course, in reality, you would actually be asking these questions of various partners to determine the best dates. Now this time, instead of doing a poll, just jot down your dates on the template, and then if you would like, share them with all of us by typing in the start and end dates in the chat box, and we'll give you about a minute to do that. And as you are doing that, we will be able to have an opportunity for sharing and seeing when everybody is starting and ending. And actually, this is really interesting because sometimes we see really long timelines. Sometimes we see timelines that are really quite short. Other times we see that people have already started, which is always really fun. And we see other people who are really just, looking far, far ahead. So, for example, we see that August is the start and June is the end date. An end date here, another one is June 15th, 2016. So that's fantastic. That's like more than a year away. You have a lot of opportunity here to really get your evaluation up and going and many different ways to think about what you can evaluate. I'll wait for a moment to see if anybody else would like to contribute their timeline. Okay, as they come in, I may notice them and I'll probably reference back to them because it does help us better understand the needs of folks on the webinar. So I just saw one that said June through October of this year. So that's a very short timeline. And you definitely will finish your training before you need to get started, so that's great. And here's another one who, just as I suspected, has already started, and they started in October 2014, and they'll end in June 2017. So they obviously have quite a big program going on, and I'm going to think that they maybe have a grant, and that's what's giving them those dates in particular, as well as such a long timeline. And one more is January 2015 through December 2016. Great. So you guys, you can see that there's all sorts of timelines that are involved. Some people have 3 years, some people have 6 months. You can do great evaluations, whether you have a lot of time, a lot of different opportunities to collect data, or you really just have one opportunity. All of this is going to matter and make a difference for your evaluation results and what you can share and how evaluation is going to help your program. Okay, the last component in step 1 on your evaluation plan is to identify existing resources. So let's see what these might be. On the bottom half of page 2 of your evaluation toolkit guide is the task of identifying resources. This includes both people who have research skills, who you'd want to include on your evaluation team, and more on that in the next section, as well as existing data. That is data someone else has already collected, but it could be really helpful to your evaluation efforts, such as student participation rates in specific activities, like the number of students in a plant sciences ecology course, for example, and the activities that those students are doing in the class that's part of the school garden program. You can go to the teacher and you can find out that information. You could learn how many are participating. You can learn what the products were. You could even maybe get some examples of the kinds of products that came out, the different types of writing or whatever they might have done that was part of the garden program. You didn't have to collect that data beyond going to the teacher and asking for it. Or it could be things like the number of students in a literacy or creative writing class and the types of writing assignments that were connected to their farm to school program. Those are really great to collect because you can often, use those as little snippets in pull-out boxes in your reports, and those are really compelling. What did the student feel, or what did they see, what did they learn? It's a great way to be able to capture some really meaningful stories. You may also want to use Common Core standards or other educational standards that your school adheres to and connect the standards directly to your farm to school programming, including your health and nutrition, math and science, and even physical activity. Our toolkit contains an appendix that will crosswalk farm to school outcomes to the Common Core to get you started. This actually provides a really strong narrative and justification for how your program is meeting the educational needs of students. It's not just a fun and nice extra thing to do. And then finally, there are many school records that can be helpful. This might include school food service records, such as daily meal production or salad bar production records, meal participation rates, student participation rates in specific activities, such as field trips to farms or their school gardens, as I mentioned, youth farmers markets, and so on. All of these types of existing information can be a great way for articulating the concrete activities of your program and how many students, teachers, parents, and so on were reached through them. In your evaluation plan, you want to first determine what types of data you have available so you know what types of data you still need to collect. There are some other resource documents that can help you fill out your evaluation and farm to school story, and these include things like school district wellness policies. These are also found within what is called the Coordinated School Health, and it can be a really great place to document policies that support your farm to school program, or it might even show the policies that have changed because of your farm to school program. The USDA Farm to School Census has a wealth of information about farm to school activities at the school district level. The first ever nationwide census, farm to school census, was conducted in 2013, and by the way, they're doing another one right now, and it was sent out to every public school district in the country. You'll want to check the USDA Farm to School Census website to see if your district completed the survey. And the next one, as I mentioned, is happening this spring. If your district did complete it, great. You've got some data from 2013 you can use. If your district didn't complete it, you might just let your food service director know how important it is to your farm to school program for them to be able to do that. And then finally, school meals and recipes are another great source of data. Here you could track how menus and recipes have changed or how they reflect the introduction of local produce. Okay, so once again, it's time to fill out your template. So I would like you to jot down just some types of existing data you know about that may help in your evaluation. If you have a data source that I haven't covered yet, it would be great for you to type it into the chat box so that it can help everybody. If you know of something that I haven't talked about, likely it's a source that might be really useful to somebody else. So let's share what kinds of data sources I haven't covered that you think you would be using. And so just type that into the chat box, and if you select all panelists, I'll be able to see it, and Sophie will repost it so all participants can also see it, and of course I'll read it off. And I'll give you a few seconds, maybe 30 or so, to get some of those in there. There is always a delay between the typing and hitting enter, and it actually reaches the screen. We've had some great contributions in the past, some things that are just so interesting to think about, and I'd love to hear what types of things are coming across in your head. And particularly, I know we have a whole bunch of you who are farm-to-school support organizations, so I wonder if you have some knowledge about, data that maybe, those people kind of in the depths of the school may not even realize are out there that could be useful. Give you a little bit more time. Of course, if we were in a room, some of you would have your hands up, or I would be calling on you anyway. Okay, so I'm still, let's see, I'm going to take a look. Okay, great. I see some coming in. So here are some great ones. Okay. Fruit and vegetable consumption surveys of school-aged youth. Wow, if you've got that, that's fantastic. Data from other successful farm-to-school programs. Actually, that's a really interesting idea because you might be able to use that as then a comparison. So it could set you up to demonstrate how you're successful or where you're trying to go, like it is possible to get there. The money spent on local produce and grown food, absolutely. A couple of other things. Let's see, school food, service specialty crop purchase versus local purchases. So this is great. And vegetable preference pre and post surveys of the kids in classes and farm sales. Farm sales are a great idea. And then data that food service distributors have. Oh my gosh. So that is fantastic because, of course, almost every school is, if they're not doing farm to school, where they're getting all of their food is from some type of food service distributor. Could be a distributor who's working with a government program, but it is a food service distributor. And they do have records. And you know what? Get them on board early. Tell them that, what you're trying to do and better understand. And they are likely to be interested and help you out and share their records or get you at least that data that's most important for you. So thanks again for that sharing. Those are really, really good ideas. Okay, now that you have your program purpose timeline all filled out, let's consider who should be on your evaluation team. So this turns out to be really a very key component. So let's take a look at what this looks like. You're not going to be doing your evaluation by yourself. Indeed, you need to recruit specific people onto your team. So these are going to be key stakeholders who are involved in your farm to school program, who have maybe specific research skills, and who will use your results. Let's take a closer look at who these folks are. The first people to consider recruiting are those who are involved in implementing the farm to school program you're evaluating, so that makes sense. So for example, you may have teachers who are implementing a nutrition education program that aligns with the Harvest of the Month offerings, or volunteers who help create and maintain school gardens. These are really good people to recruit to your evaluation team. Perhaps your site has a food corps service member working with the teachers and students in the school garden. You'll definitely want to recruit this person. Food service staff or directors, if the farm to school program involves local garden in the food or local garden food in the cafeteria, you'll definitely want to have them because so much of what you're trying to understand is how it's affecting the eating in the cafeteria. And then often overlooked are your local producers who are selling to the school. Now, I have to give you a warning, if you don't already know, that producers are very, very busy. And so when you recruit them to your team, be realistic about how often they can participate. You could get their input at just critical times for designing the evaluation, but don't expect them to be involved in all your team meetings. And then finally, local community partners that provide direct support to your Farm to School program are important members of the team, and we obviously have a number of them on this webinar today. Other interested stakeholders are important to include on your team, both for their perspective, knowledge, and skills, as well as their buy-in for conducting the evaluation and using its results. So some of these stakeholders would be school-wide, district-wide health and wellness committee members, or your local public health officials, particularly if they're implementing some strategies that align with your Farm to School efforts. And don't forget your school nurses who may be particularly interested in healthy food habits of their kids. Principals, school board members, teachers, school nurses, paraprofessionals, and others in the schools where you may need access to students for surveying or other data collection can be really, really important for having on your team. Parents are especially important as they can be some of your most vocal advocates of the good work you're doing. Community organizations and leaders are really wonderful because they broadcast out beyond your school, and they can really help you with your funding. They can help building the public will and the interest, and even with elected officials and so on. So, I mean, this is just so great when you really can broaden out beyond your school boundaries. And then finally, funders. So don't think that any of these evaluation team members as maybe extras, they would be great to have if we could. You really want to get some of those on board, and you want to do it as early as possible so that your evaluation design will benefit from their perspectives and it will meet their interests. While this toolkit is designed for non-evaluators, I have to tell you it can be helpful to have someone with research or evaluation skills on your team. So fortunately, this is not as hard as it may sound. Access to individuals with research skills such as designing surveys, analyzing data, and reporting results will be a great benefit to your effort. This access might be someone on your staff, so ask. It might be someone else in your school district, or it could be a contractor, especially if you have a grant that pays for an evaluator. Be creative. So for example, identify people in your community who have research skills but work for another organization. Or do you have a partner with an organization that already does evaluation? Go and ask them. You know, what I have found over the years, and I'm sure you know this too, is that people have a real passion for getting healthy food to our kids. And so many people will just volunteer their efforts. Give them a try. You will be surprised, or maybe you won't be surprised, at all of the passion and interest people will have and what the help they'll provide to you. So if your staff if the staff available to help with evaluation doesn't have research skills, the place you can go look is outside your department or even in your school district. So for example, outreach to your local colleges and help through your extension agents can actually be really, really useful and things that these groups are really interested in doing. So I have to tell you that as a previous professor, it was often the case that I wanted my students to analyze data, but it seemed so silly to give them the skills to analyze data when it was just kind of made up data or data that, you know, came with a statistical package. They really learn the skills best by being involved in a research project. So you have lots and lots of professors and teachers out there who would love to be able to give a real project to their students so they can learn how to do this. And they will help oversee the quality control on it. So all of this kind of information on how you go about recruiting outside and reaching out to those university partners is available in Appendix A, so I encourage you to go look at that. Now it's time to put together your evaluation team. So who are your program implementers think about their role. Are they the school garden leaders? Are they the science teachers? Are they the food service directors? What are they? Who are they? And then who are your interested stakeholders that you'd really want to have on your team? They're going to be important because you're going to be sharing the information with them. They're important because they've got ideas that you know are just like going to broaden out your way of thinking about how farm to school makes a difference. And then finally, who has the research skills that you would like to recruit? Do you have somebody internally on your staff? Is there somebody in your school district? Is there somebody at a local university? Maybe even there's a math teacher. And of course, it could be you. So take a minute or so to begin to identify who should be on your evaluation team. And as you're filling out the template, if you have thought of a group that I haven't mentioned, it would be great to have you tell us what it is by submitting it into our chat. Thanks. So I'll give you a little bit of time to do this. Oh, yes. So people are talking about students, of course. In fact, I feel a little foolish for not having thought about that. So to the students on the webinars, I apologize. Students are absolutely wonderful and so critical to your evaluation team. Other ideas, food service staff union representatives. Oh, what an interesting idea. So that's a fantastic, great thing to do. And the reason that that strikes me, so I don't know why this person thought of it, but the thing that comes to my mind is that, you know, in order for your cafeteria program to really do a really bang-up job on farm to school, you need your cafeteria staff to care about it. And for the cafeteria staff to care about it, if they're in a union, they probably need for the union to care about it or to see the benefit. Because you know what? This is taking a lot of staff outside their comfort level, outside of their knowledge level. And so, you know, letting the union know that this is like a great benefit to the staff and letting them see what it does for the staff and even having the union support the staff in that can be so incredibly important. Another idea is to find researchers and evaluators is to contact local public health departments. So thank you. That is absolutely true. In fact, we do in-person workshops on this toolkit with our public health departments. So an obvious one for me to have mentioned. Thank you for mentioning it. And I will wait for maybe one more idea and then we'll move on again. Local farming organization or a local ag commodity commissions. Again, this is actually a really great idea because producers are very busy because, you know, they are growing the food and they have a lot to deal with the weather and watering and pests and, you know, everything about it. So farming is not an easy life. Getting somebody from an organization is actually a really great idea, a farm organization, because they, in fact, by the nature of the hat that they, you know, wear in that organization, may have more time, and they may have actually more understanding of the variety of production out there. So that is a fantastic idea. Thank you, everyone, for contributing. I hope you got a lot of good ideas. I know that I did. So let's keep moving. We are almost at the end of this particular one, but before we get there, I want to touch on what is often something that either you've never thought about or you've thought about it and it has scared you. So this last section is an introduction to what we call human subjects protections, or it's also called informed consent. Informed consent means telling individuals about your evaluation and asking whether they are willing to participate. If any identifying information is collected or reported about individuals participating in the evaluation, the evaluator is required to obtain their informed consent. So if you're distributing a survey where there's no identifying information collected, informed consent is usually not necessary. In this case, the participant's decision to fill out and return a survey would count as informed consent. However, it's not quite that easy. So let's take a look, because when it involves children, there's a few more hoops. So when minors are participating in an evaluation, typically you need something along these lines. You need a notice of active or passive consent, which would have to be sent to the parents or guardians. In addition, if the children are age 7 or older, you may be required to use an assent form. So when evaluating K through 12 programs in a formal school setting, there are often other necessary actions to take. Permission to conduct evaluation, work with the children, and collect data should also be obtained from the school district or the particular school you're working in. Institutional review boards, which are known as the IRBs, are independent ethics committees or human ethics committees. And these are groups that are mandated by federal regulation that review and monitor plans for research and evaluation that involve humans. It's important to keep in mind that these committees not only protect evaluation participants from unethical methods or inappropriate questions, but they also protect you and your program in the event that someone doesn't like some part of your evaluation. Typically, colleges, universities, federal agencies, as well as some state and local agencies have the authority to review and approve IRB applications. Sometimes even your larger school districts have their own internal IRB process. If the institution you're affiliated with has an IRB or some similar committee, and if your evaluation involves individuals or groups of people that you would be required to have an IRB, you go straight to them. So this is kind of regardless of the source of funding, the location of your participants, or even if your research really presents minimal or no obvious risk. If you've got an IRB group that's part of your organization, just check in with them, because that is the smart thing to do, and they're there because they believe that there are evaluations and research that needs to be reviewed. So an IRB application usually includes these 9 components shown here on this slide. And the toolkit that we have actually has links to IRB guidance if you need to submit human subjects reviews. IRBs are not needed for every evaluation at a school. I bet you're giving a big sigh of relief here. By federal law, you can request an exempt status if your evaluation is conducted in a commonly accepted educational setting and accesses regular educational practices, such as research on existing or potentially new instructional strategies. So this could be, for example, a garden curriculum, or research on the effectiveness or the comparison among instructional techniques, curriculum, or classroom management methods. Another exemption would be your evaluation uses educational tests, survey procedures, interview procedures, or observation of public behavior that does not have any information that can identify specific individuals. And finally, you could be exempt if you collect or study existing data, documents, or records that cannot be linked to individuals either by name or through identifying codes. But remember, really only your IRB committee can determine if your evaluation is exempt. So even if you suspect your evaluation meets this criteria for exemption, again, I cannot emphasize too much that it's important to contact your IRB office. And the final thing I want to say is let's just consider real quickly how IRBs might relate to a farm-to-school evaluation, and how you could create an evaluation that would not be such a big IRB hoop to go through. So for many of you, you're wondering, how can I collect data from children that doesn't require an IRB? So part of this is to determine the answer. You're going to need to ask yourself whether or not your evaluation can be classified as what we call research. Research is defined as the systematic investigation designed to develop or contribute to generalizable knowledge. So for those doing evaluation for internal use only, program improvement maybe, you and others will not be publishing an article about those results. It would actually not be considered research. However, if you are sharing those results with stakeholders and funders, it could be used to contribute to generalizable knowledge and would be considered research. So this research may or may not be exempt. However, there's other kinds of research that we may think about that could be exempt. So for example, if you're doing taste and food quality evaluation through taste tests. These different types of evaluations can be exempted because you are tasting what are called wholesome foods without additives. So if you're just giving different kinds of simple recipes that are really just using whole foods in them, or you're having them taste some fruits and vegetables that are maybe unusual, that you suspect are not in their usual diet and you want to get a chance for them to give some feedback on it, these are considered wholesome foods and would not require, they would be exempt. And then a couple of more things would be that there are various educational settings that would be exempt, and there are really way too many here to discuss, but there is a great resource guide, and it is right here. And again, you will get all of this information after the webinar, so don't try and write down this particular URL. But this is a great decision chart that will walk you through and help you figure out exactly where your particular project fits in IRBs. And then the last thing I will say is that you should always check on your state and local laws and regulations, because there could be additional things that go beyond the federal requirements on human subjects. Here's just a great little picture of that IRB decision flow chart that is in that link that, again, you will get at the end of this webinar. So in summary, we've covered quite a bit today, and I would like to just give you an opportunity to think about how you continue to fill out step one after this particular webinar, because I know we've covered a lot, and a lot in step one takes more thought than what you could possibly do in our hour. So I would like for you to go back and do more work on step one, and then I want you to bring that evaluation plan with you to the next webinar, which will be Outcomes, Indicators, and Measures. If you haven't already signed up for that, you can register at it at this particular link, and please do. Everyone who participates in today's webinar is going to be directed to a survey, which helps us improve our trainings. So I really, really encourage you to take the 5 minutes to answer our quick little survey at the end of this particular webinar. Also, you will have an opportunity to tell us what you want to learn in the next webinar about outcomes, indicators, and measures, and we'll be sure to include it in our training. Everyone who participates in this webinar series is invited to join our virtual forum, where you can post questions, share ideas, and let folks know how your evaluation is going. Okay, I have taken up more time than our allotted 60 minutes, but for those of you who can stay on and have some questions, I too can stay on, and so we'll just open it up now. So do the rules, here's a question actually about the IRB. So do rules for children apply even if the evaluation doesn't contain or ask for identifying information? So this is actually a really great question, and the answer is to go on the side, to be conservative about it. You want to ask your principal, you want to ask, you may have actually a human resources person in the school. You want to check in with somebody. It could be the case that they are perfectly good with what you're doing, and there are certain things that are truly exempt. So like those taste tests in the cafeteria, they are exempt and you are good to go. But there are going to be some things that you maybe need to be careful on, and it's not because, you know, the fact that you can't actually identify them isn't the issue. The issue comes down to whether or not people think that, you know, you're going to be asking questions that might make them uncomfortable. And so even if you can't identify who's answering it, the process itself of the evaluation, it becomes a concern. And so you really do need to check in on it. And it may be the case that because of the way you're doing questions or the depth of the questions or the type of information you're really trying to gather, somebody may think that this is something that needs to be reviewed. Okay, any other questions? It's a great question, and I wish I had a more straightforward answer. We still have, okay, oh, here's a good one. I have to miss the next webinar, but want to get the notes. So do I need to register for the webinar, or will I get the notes automatically? Would you register for the webinar? That is the most sure way that you will get it. It will just be right in there, and so it's no problem if you are unable to actually do the webinar with us at that time. The other advantage, honestly, is that you'll get the information about when it will be uploaded and all of that. So it's just good to register. I would also mention that while, of course, you can watch these webinars, you know, on your own time, it is useful. It's useful in a number of different ways to be part of a group. And I hope you saw some of that already, because you have an opportunity to, you know, think about the stuff as you're going through it, to see what other people are contributing. And it, you know, while I know it's not like we get to all talk, and so in that respect, it's not as interactive as, you know, a classroom would be, or, you know, some kind of webinar that had everybody's picture and we could talk with each other. There still is an element that allows for much more interactivity and ways of understanding and getting your brain engaged in your farm to school evaluation. So we really do encourage participating in the live series as much as you can. And we are now, oh my goodness, 7 minutes over. I don't see any more questions coming in. If it turns out that you do have a question, and you didn't get a chance to put it in here, or you think of a question afterwards, please feel free to either email it to me or Sophie. Even better would be to get onto the virtual forum and post your question there. Sophie and I participate, or will love to participate on that forum for any questions that are offered. So please do use that as a way to share and learn from each other. And thank you so much for being part of webinar number 1 in Series 4 of the Farm to School Evaluation Toolkit. And we hope to see you back here same day, same time next week. Thanks, everyone.